The next CHRS swap meet is Saturday, September 20th at the Foothill Electronics Museum parking lot. It was a cold, bleak evening in late September, and Bill Fenwick was feeling rather fed up as he sat on duty at the little 5-kilowatt station at Windy Bay. Windy Bay is a small town hidden away on the great northwest coast. The wireless station is perched on the top of a cliff which forms a circle around the harbor, and from the station to the shore there is a sheer drop of some 300 feet or more. Bill, having nothing better to do, was ruminating on the queerness of people in general, and Mr. Ralph Conway in particular. Mr. Conway, who was commonly known as the Old Man, was the officer in charge of the station. He apparently lived in perpetual fear, and Bill was often tempted to ask him why he always carried an automatic pistol in a peaceful little place like Windy Bay. But his manner precluded familiarity, and, moreover, one's past is not one's own in the great Northwest. The Old Man was a tall, heavily built fellow, a little past the prime of life, but his features made him look older than he really was. Imprinted on his face was the unmistakable mark of the haunted, the mark of one who dwells in constant fear for his life. He had a peculiar habit of suddenly glancing backward over his shoulder, and so great was his terror lest anyone should come upon him from behind that he had placed a large mirror over the operating table in order to command a full view of the room while he was on duty. In addition to this, he always bolted the door on the inside, and while he was working at night, never allowed anyone to enter until the next morning, or until the next operator came to relieve him. The only courage he knew was the kind that he bought by the flask when he drank, when he needed it, which was quite often. Although a drink or two made him a corking good sender, it had a disastrous effect upon his temper, a fact which Bill and Edgar Sloan, the third operator, knew only too well to their sorrow. Just 2 days before, while in a drunken rage at some imaginary negligence on the part of one of the operators, the Old Man had picked up the phones, ripping them from the receiving set, and hurled them at Edgar's head. Luckily, they missed their objective, but smashed themselves hopelessly against the wall. A brand new pair was now in use at the station. Bill was pondering on these things and wondered what would happen next when he realized he was being called. The call was quite loud and sounded like a spark coil, which struck him as being rather strange since there were no amateur stations within hundreds of miles. However, he replied with a string of CHRS, and the answer came buzzing back. "This is the yacht Ventura, arriving at Windy Bay. Is John Nesbitt the chief operator at this station?" John Nesbitt? Bill suddenly remembered that only a few weeks ago he had seen one of the Old Man's books with that very name written on the flyleaf. Could he be living under an assumed name? "No," he flashed back. "His name is Ralph Conway. QTC? QTC? He has a slight scar on his left cheek?" Bill was startled. "Yes," he replied, for as a matter of fact the Old Man did have a scar on the cheek indicated. "Is he at the station now?" "If not, where is he, and when will he be back?" asked the unseen interrogator on the Ventura. The other operator curiously caused Bill some surprise, but he replied, "No, he's in town now, probably at the Golden Eagle Saloon. He won't be back until about midnight when he goes on duty." "Thanks. Can you lend me some carborundum if I come up and get it?" "Sure," replied Bill. "Come right up." He went to the window, and in the gathering twilight he saw a 75-foot yacht laying at anchor almost beneath the station. It was equipped with a large 4-wire aerial, which extended from the bow of the boat up to the masts and down again to the stern. Even as he watched, a dory was lowered and 2 men got in and rowed to the shore. One jumped out and walked along the beach while the other waited in the dory. 20 minutes later there was a slight knock on the door, and Bill, upon opening it, received quite a surprise, for the visitor was a little old man with long white hair and a white beard. He wore a furtive, cunning look, but when he spoke, his rather pleasant voice dispelled the bad impression which was created by his appearance. No amount of pleasantness, however, could counteract the almost maniacal glint that crept into his eye from time to time. "Good evening, young man," he said as he stepped into the station. "I'm Robert Strathroy of the Ventura. Nice little set you've got here. Those are good-looking phones." With these words, he stepped inside to the table, picked up the phones, and examined them intently. "Yes," said Bill. "They were new just 2 days ago. You seem to be quite a radio enthusiast, Mr. Strathroy." The other laughed, a short, unpleasant laugh, and a wild, half-crazed light shone in his eye. "My boy," he said, "wireless has occupied my time and attention for many years. It has brought me great pleasure, and will bring me more pleasure yet." They talked for nearly half an hour, during which Mr. Strathroy asked a great many questions as to the appearance and the habits of the old man. At last he rose to go, and while Bill was getting him some carborundum, he carefully examined the phones once more. On the doorstep he paused. "I guess you find life rather dull here, eh? How'd you like me to bring you some magazines? I've got a whole pile of them down in the boat." "Well, they would be very acceptable," agreed Bill. "I've read pretty nearly everything in the station." "All right. I'll be back with them in a little while. See you later." "So long. Don't get lost in the dark." More than an hour had elapsed before there was another knock at the door, and Mr. Strathroy stepped into the room carrying a bundle of magazines and a tin can. "Here are your magazines. Sorry I kept you waiting so long, but I had to do some work on the boat. I brought this can to see if you could let me have some coal oil." "Oh, thanks," said Bill. "Wait a minute, I'll get you some." He took the can and went out to the engine room. It took several minutes to remove the cork, and then he even broke it and had to look for another one, so fully 10 minutes had elapsed before he returned to the operating room. When he entered, he found his visitor standing by the table, holding the phones in his hands, and the expression on his face was most diabolical. It passed so quickly, though, that he scarcely was sure whether his eyes had deceived him or not. All he could think to say was, "Here's your coal oil, Mr. Strathroy." "Oh, all right," replied the latter. "Thanks very much. I guess I'd better be getting back to the boat now. By the way, young man, please say nothing about me to Mr. Nesbitt, or rather Ralph Conroy, as you call him. I'm an old friend of his, and I want to have a surprise for him in the morning." Bill promised to keep his mouth shut and showed his visitor out. When he returned to his post, little suspecting the ghastly surprise that was in store for the old man. At about 11:45, the old man returned, apparently quite sober, but Bill knew him too well to be deceived. He came into the room, examined the window locks carefully, then told Bill he could go. As Bill left, he heard the old man slide the bolt on the inside of the door, and thus completely lock himself into the room. The next morning, when Edgar went to relieve him, he found the door locked as usual, but no amount of knocking brought an answer. Alarmed, he awoke Bill, and together they broke down the door with an axe. What a sight met their eyes! There on the floor by the table lay the old man, surrounded by a pool of blood that had trickled from a small bullet hole in his right ear. Beside him lay the phones, one of which was smashed to atoms, as though a bullet had struck it before it had penetrated the unfortunate man's head. Horror-stricken, Bill phoned the police, and then started to search the room. The old man's hair was badly singed, so the shot must have been fired from only a few inches from his head. However, the most diligent search failed to reveal any weapon, which made the verdict of suicide impossible. Yet, how could it have been murder? Every window was locked, and the door had been bolted from the inside all night. Suddenly, Bill thought of his visitor. He rushed to the window. The Ventura was gone. When the police arrived, Bill told them all he knew. Together they searched the body. In his fall, the old man struck his wristwatch against the edge of the table, and now the hand stood jammed, pointing to 3:15. This was a clue. Inquiries phoned to the lighthouse revealed the fact that the yacht answering the Ventura's description had pulled out about 3:40 o'clock. Circumstantial evidence now all pointed toward the mysterious Mr. Strathroy. But how had he gained access to the room in the first place? And how, moreover, had he left the door and the windows securely bolted when he departed after committing the crime? Apparently, he alone could answer. Acting upon instructions from the chief of police, Bill broadcast a description of the Ventura and asked all vessels to keep a lookout for her, since her occupants were wanted on a charge of murder. He sent out a short account of the crime and the mystery surrounding it. Almost immediately, he received a message from the operator on the SS John Hanlon. Passed Windy Bay last night at 3 a.m. Noticed peculiar occurrence about time of murder. At 3:10, heard a rumbling sound in phones. This slowly increased in volume and pitch until it became a loud shriek. It stopped suddenly at 3:15. Bill immediately communicated this information to the police headquarters, and they decided it could only be a coincidence and had no bearing on the case. 9 days later, the destroyer Nimrod overtook and arrested the yacht Ventura halfway across the Pacific headed for China. The sole occupants were 3 men, old Mr. Strathroy and 2 sailors. On board the yacht, he found a very complete radio laboratory, including a 2-kilowatt transmitter. Upon being accused of the murder, Strathroy broke down and confessed. His story, as it appeared in the newspapers on the continent, ran as follows. 10 years ago, a man named John Nesbitt defiled my daughter, my only child. I swore I would never let him rest until I had brought about his death. I bought a yacht and cruised around the world in quest of him. A month ago, I accidentally learned that he was the chief operator at the Windy Bay station and was living under the name of Ralph Conway. I immediately set out for Windy Bay and visited the wireless station during his absence. While the operator on duty was out of the room getting me some coal oil, I changed the phones for a pair I had brought with me. Inside of one of these phones there was a small steel tube containing a .22 caliber bullet and a charge of gunpowder. Through the powder ran a very fine resistance wire. Wireless signals of average strength would pass through harmlessly, but any extremely loud ones would heat the resistance wire. If these signals were continued for several minutes in the form of a long, unbroken dash, the wire would become sufficiently heated to ignite the powder. This would discharge the bullet into the head of any person who happened to be wearing the phones at the time. The force of the explosion would also wreck the phones, thus destroying all the evidence. I went back to my yacht, which was laying at anchor, almost directly beneath the wireless station. There I waited, for I had learned that Nesbitt, or Conway as he called himself, would be on duty that night from midnight until 8 in the morning. At 10 minutes past 3, I started the engine that supplies power for the 2-kilowatt transmitter. I then held down my key, and as the engine gained in speed the power increased. At 3:15, I released the key and shut off the engine, for I knew that Nesbitt was dead. I then weighed anchor and set out for China. That is all I have to confess. You can do what you like with me now. My mission is accomplished. The preceding story, The Death Dash, appeared in the May 1921 issue of Radio News. I bet you're wondering what happened to the classifieds. Well, they're coming right up.
Our new ad format will make it easier than ever to submit ads. Just say what you want to buy or trade and have to sell into a tape recorder. You can take as much time as you wish to describe articles. If you prefer, you may write what you have to say and we will read it for you. To make it even easier, you may call Gary Halverson at 408-266-2218. That's 408-266-2218. And when this telephone recorder starts, just say what you want to buy and sell, and we will put it into the next issue. As always, ads are free to CHRS members.
Yeah, this is John Wenzel of Aladdin Radio. I am at 1609 Irving Street, San Francisco. That's about at the corner of Irving and 17th Avenue, just off of 19th Avenue here. My phone number here is 415-731-1920. I have the following radio chassis for sale. Now these are chassis only, no cabinets with them. You have a Model 89 Philco, complete with speaker and tubes. An Edison 9-tube chassis. I don't know the model number. Uses 327s, 324s, a pair of 45s, and an 80. It's a 2-chassis set. It's $35. And Fried Eisman Model 37. This is a 2-chassis and 2-speaker set. 21-tube model. It's $50. You have a Packard Bell table model with a tuning eye, 6 push buttons. It's $25. Have an Atwater Kent chassis model 856 or 976, 6 tubes with the original knobs but no speaker, and that was $50. Have a RCA model 9T, that's a 9-tube with a tuning eye complete with the original knobs, $45. Have a Majestic AM/FM chassis complete with knobs and speaker, 9-tube, model 8FM744, $25. Have a Philco model 46-1209 with the speaker and loop antenna, an 8-tube chassis. It's $35. You have a General Electric model K62 9-tube chassis, no speaker, $25. Have a Westone Model 30, 4 tubes with the speaker, $12.50. The Packard Bell 5 tube AC table model chassis was $12.50. And the Spartan Model 25-26, 10 tubes, it plays, there's no speaker, $35. Have a Midwest 14 tube chassis, no speaker, don't know the model number, $35. Have a Pilot Super Wasp converter, model 40672 is $15. We have the upper chassis of an RCA model D22-1, that's recapped and plays well with the original knobs, $45. So much for the bare chassis. Also have a 1933 RCA model 240. It's a nice looking 6-legged console, original finish, looks very good. It's $300. That's playing. Have a 1942 Zenith chairside set. That's $95. And a 1929 RCA R32 console. It's a $285. That's all been restored. The power supply has been rebuilt, including a new power transformer. So much for the radio section. We also have an unlimited supply of electron tubes. If you need anything, why just call in. So much for the ad.
Greetings. My name is Steve Webster, and I have several radios for sale. The first one is a 1937 Crosley Fiver. The cabinet is in very good condition, and the chassis is completely restored. I'm asking $95 for this set. Second on the list is a 1940-41 Zenith radio phonograph, and if memory serves me correctly, the model number is 10S690. The cabinet is in good shape. The radio is restored and works very well. The phonograph works, but the bearings are a little noisy and could possibly need a helping hand. $150 on this one. And the third radio on the list that needs a good home is a 1935 RCA Victor Model C11-4. The radio is completely restored. The cabinet is restored and looks very nice and is newly lacquered. And I'm asking $275 for this set. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Steve Webster. If you'd like to contact me, the telephone number is area code 415-681-4190. Over and out.
This is Paul Borbin. I have for sale newly made Galena crystals that resemble the old ones for $3 each. They are more efficient than many older ones and are made in the original way. I am willing to do early antique phonograph repair and restoration for CHRS members at a reduced rate. I would like the manuals for the following items. Xerox copies are okay. General Radio Impedance Bridge Type 650A. Night Signal Tracer. Supreme Model 385 Tube Tester and Analyzer. ICO 955 In-Circuit Capacitor Tester. Weston Capacity Meter Model 664. Precision 860 Multi-Range Meter. I would also like a book on the signal tracing method of troubleshooting. Again, my name is Paul Borbin, and my address is 25 Greenview Court, San Francisco, California 94131. My phone number is 415-648-8489.
Gigante of San Carlos. I have an estate sale many tubes, 201As, 299s, WD11s, and several Moorhead types. Also some tubular audiotrons. Prices vary. Also 2 each of SE-143 receivers at $800 each, and 1 Model 1899 receiver at $800. Also several horn speakers at various prices from $35 to $75. Many other items, too numerous to mention. And my phone number is 408-593-4723. Thank you very much.
Just in case you had some trouble understanding the front end of that last one, that was Paul Gigante, and Paul is in San Carlos. His address is 2429 San Carlos Avenue, San Carlos, California, and his telephone number is area code 415-593-4723.
This is Doug Martin from San Jose, California. I have a Drake 2C and a Drake 2CQ multiplier, and I'm letting the combination go. They're in mint condition for about $85 or best offer. I also have a World War II 220 megahertz transmitter with 10 pre-selected channels. It's called a T216/GR. It's made by Collins, and it will put out about 200 watts on 220. Give me a call at 225-3785, and that's area code 408. Thanks very much.
The CHRS Radio News is the official publication of the CHRS. The views expressed herein are solely those of the editors and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the Society, its officers, or its members, except as might otherwise be noted by byline. Articles of timeliness and relevance for possible publication in the radio news are always welcomed, either in written or audio form. The Society's address is CHRS, P.O. Box 1147, Mountain View, California, 94042, 1147. The publisher is not responsible for any buying and selling transactions incurred by listeners through the content of this publication. CHRS Radio News is subject to change in frequency of publication, content, duration, and type.
This is H.V. Kaltenborn. Good night.
This is Lowell Thomas saying so long.
And now the time has come to lend thine ears to Au revoir, pleasant dreams. Au revoir, pleasant dreams. Think of us when requesting your theme. Until next Tuesday when possibly you all may tune in again. Keep the old maestro always in your seat. Yowza.